Welcome back to this show. I'm so excited for my guest today. This is Jodi Cohen, and we have some really great information. She's the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils. So, Jodi, I know we have a lot that we're going to talk about with your new upcoming book, but I really want to know your story. How did you end up getting into this? How did you start into creating an entire company? And then we can deep dive into the book.
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention. I got into nutrition through my second child. My first one was super easy, so I just assumed I was a good mom and had another one 22 months later who was not easy. And I kept trying different parenting strategies, and it turned out it was food related. And when we changed his diet, his whole personality changed. And that was so surprising to me because I'd been banging my head against the wall for years that I went back and got a degree in nutrition and was helping other moms and, wiggly, squirmy kids. I learned a technique called muscle testing,
Mhm.
which helped me kind of very quickly ascertain what remedy would put a system in balance. And that came in handy when I hit my own rock bottom. My then husband was bipolar, and it became pretty clear that he might die on my watch. So we moved him into a residential treatment facility. And the moment I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, it was like my adrenals finally decided it was safe to collapse,
Mhm.
which was not convenient because my kids were 5 and 7. I had a full time job. I was like class parent. And so I knew enough, like I knew what I was supposed to be ingesting, and I was taking all the right supplements and eating all the right foods, and nothing was helping.
No.
But luckily, I had just planned a big event for a friend, and she showed up with a thank you gift, a big box of essential oils, and said something that really caught my attention. She said, you have been so chronically stressed, which we know releases cortisol, which we know triggers systemic inflammation. I bet your gut is just so inflamed that nothing you're ingesting is actually getting assimilated and absorbed. Uh, Essential oils are really good for they go through the skin, the transdermal channel, and inhalation. These might help. And I thought, why not? I've tried everything else. And I muscle tested the box. Will anything in here help my adrenals? Was surprised to get 5 oils. I usually get like 1 or 2 remedies. And that stumped me for a moment. And then it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, these are liquid. I could combine them. Maybe I just test how many drops of each. So, being an oil newbie, I went in my kitchen, grabbed a shot glass, formulated my first blend, I know, right? Put it on my low back and felt like myself. It was this really almost like a recalibration, reboot to factory settings. So I was like, oh my gosh, I could go running, which was always my go to for stress. But, when walking up your stairs to your bedroom feels exhausting,
Right.
running was not really in the cards. So, anyway, I went running, I cleaned the house, I did all the laundry, put it away, went to the supermarket, made their favorite meal, got them to bed, and was kind of lying in bed, reverse engineering the day. And I thought that was a real win. Like, I'm going to keep doing that. And then high stress often correlates with poor sleep. So I I joke, I call it my clock watching game, like, ooh, 10 o'clock, 10:12, 10:20, and somewhere between 10:20 and 10:30, I thought, wait a minute, I wonder if I could do an oil blend for sleep. I know it's my pineal gland that's not releasing melatonin. I know, from practice that the skin above the ears is really thin, and that's a good place to apply like topical melatonin. So I just made up another blend, put it on, on the skin above the ears. Actually, I no longer recommend putting it on the forehead because, if you move around at night, that's not the best choice and it can get in your eyes. So, top of the head, back of the head, passed out, didn't wake up until my 5-year-old was like bouncing on my bed the next day. And I'm like, okay, that was a win. And I just kind of kept making things up as I went to help. When I started feeling like myself again, my fellow nutrition friends were like, oh, wait, what were you doing? I want to try it. And, I was kind of laughing. I'm like, all right, I don't know why it works or if it works, but here you go. And it worked for them, it worked for their clients. And at a certain point, they said, you should do something with this. This is really interesting. And I thought, well, gosh, someone must be doing it. It's so obvious to do like blends for organ systems and regions of the brain. So I finally went online and looked at how oils were being kind of positioned and was really surprised by a couple of things. First of all, that no one was really looking at blends this way. Most companies were selling single oils. And secondly, that they made it seem so incredibly complicated to blend oils. I was almost grateful that I hadn't started there because I would have felt completely unqualified. And so, conveniently, there was a Nutritional Therapy Association conference like in the next month. And a friend pointed out that it was $200 to be a vendor. And she's like, we should just go, proof of concept it. So we showed up, we made like maybe 100 kits, and we sold out within the first day. And people
Oh
were
my
like,
gosh.
oh my goodness, my clients tell me about oils. I'm interested in them, but I had no idea how to really integrate it into my practice. You've made it so obvious.
Mhm.
So I threw up a website, would write blogs, because I have a background as a journalist, and kind of fill orders when the kids were asleep. And it just kept growing organically.
Great. That is
Yeah.
so great. So then tell us about the new book
Yeah.
comes out in March.
March 16th.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. It's gonna let's go into the vagus nerve and
Yeah.
fill them in why, and especially after we have just walked out of 2020, like we all survived 2020. We're not sure 2021 is going to be much better, but
Yeah.
hey, our whole sympathetic parasympathetic system is, I think everybody's is a little bit stressed right now. So
Yeah, yeah. So the book is Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. And the genesis was really this idea that in the beginning, I thought everyone was bio-individual and incredibly complicated. And over time, you start to notice patterns. You start to notice that the same five systems are often out of balance in everyone, and that they happen to be systems that lend themselves especially well to essential oils to rebalance. So that's what I really focus on. And the five things are um, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which I'll dive into, sleep, drainage, and circulation, making sure that the bad things leave the body and the good things get into the brain and where they're supposed to go. Kind of the energy to heal, and then immune modulation, making sure your immune system doesn't underreact or overreact. So, the most important thing, the biggest aha, and especially for right now, is that we all think of like, oh my God, I'm stressed, but if I go to the spa, the laundry still needs to get done. Like, we see stress as kind of an external circumstance that we have no control over. And so we just have to react to it. And what I really want, if people hear nothing else but this today, stress is an internal response that
mhm.
you can control. And that's what I want to explain. Your autonomic nervous system is your operating system. It controls all of your automatic functions, your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your detoxification, your ability to turn on your immune system, to focus, to anti inflame. Because it's designed to keep you alive, it basically has different gears. If you think you're going to die because there's a lion chasing you down the street, or more realistically, you have anticipatory stress, you're worried about your finances, your relationships, your health, your family members, that triggers a different chemical cascade in the body that really prioritizes survival. So your heart beats faster, your breathing quickens, your blood flow is routed to your arms and your legs and away from your organs of digestion. Your pupils, the black parts of your eyes, dilate, which means get bigger, black saucers. And that allows you to selectively focus on the few things, to either fight or flee to keep you alive. But this is a really critical point. It shuts down your access to your higher problem solving skills. You see things as black and white, not as multiple shades of gray with multiple options. So that is your parasympathetic nervous system. And that the big hack is that the on off switch between your sympathetic stressed out nervous system and your parasympathetic I feel safe nervous system is your vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body that most people have never heard of. Super quick anatomy lesson, starts at the back of the head, winds around both sides, is most accessible behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone, then winds through the throat, the heart, the lungs, every organs of digestion and detoxification. It's a two-lane highway. It helps the brain communicate with the body communicate with the brain. So anytime you like stimulate any of the organs it innervates, like the lungs with deep breathing, you help activate it and shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, conveniently in 2012, right when my company was launching, there was a New York neuroscientist by the name of Kevin Tracy, who was playing with the vagus nerve, and he started doing kind of a surgical implant, like a pacemaker like device, right on that mastoid bone earlobe point, because
Mhm.
that's where it's most accessible to the surface. He had so much success that the FDA has approved this surgical implant for epilepsy, depression, migraines. I was playing with oils, and originally I thought, like, oh, the vagus nerve is calming. We want to use calming oils for parasympathetic. But when I read this research, I was like, wait a minute, he's stimulating. There are stimulatory oils like clove and lime. If the goal is to stimulate, I got that, because there's a whole branch of essential oils that kind of uses them like you would acupuncture needles to stimulate points. And so I created this blend of clove and lime. You apply it right behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone, and it's literally the gear shift, the internal gear shift. The world is still crazy, and yet you are okay. You feel safe. You can make good choices. And the example that most people seem to understand is sometimes you're driving in traffic, someone cuts you off, and you're fine. You like the song you're listening to, you're not in a hurry, it really doesn't bother you at all. You keep driving, everything's good. Same, thing can happen like a couple days later, and four-letter words are falling out of your mouth.
Right.
And the only variable is you and your resilience in that moment. And being able to access the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system gives you that resilience. And that is really the only way you can kind of navigate through these times. We have no idea what's happening tomorrow, how the
Right.
world is going to change. But as long as you feel safe and stable, you're well equipped to handle it no matter what happens.
I love it. You're speaking my language. I didn't tell you this. I'm an upper cervical chiropractor. So this is exactly the area that we work with. And it's so much with the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So my patients that are listening absolutely know, like, this is obviously an audio podcast, but if you watch this on if on the recording, you're going to see where she's touching is literally the place where we do our adjustments. So much of that. And the vagus, my little thing from, anatomy class, means the wanderer, which it does. It wanders all throughout the body. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit on how what can trigger vagus nerve toxicity then.
Yeah, this is something most people don't realize, that stress, in addition to be kind of your emotional response to the world around you, it can be your internal response to pathogens in your body. Like stress can be a buildup of toxicity. And what most people don't realize is that a popular point for those toxins to build up is the vagus nerve. So many of the toxins enter our body through our mouth, right? We've
Mhm.
got the microbes. If we have metal amalgams, those are off-gassing and causing toxins. If we have cavitations or root canals that are infected. So all of that waste, that garbage, needs to drain along the jawline, the trigeminal nerve, which directly intersects the vagus nerve, kind of at that point in the neck. And what most people don't realize is the neck is really the bottleneck in the body. There's a lot
Mhm.
going on in there. We've got the structure, the muscles, the nerves, the lymph, the vascular system. And if anything is congested, think of like the middle seat in an airplane, like between two linebackers. Where are your arms going? They don't have a lot of space because they're congested. So let's just say you've got all this toxicity that's trying to drain. Your lymph is congested, so it can't like take it out of the neck as fast as possible. Nerves have a really high affinity for toxins. They get uptaken into the nerve. It's called, there's a Tufts researcher called Michael Van Eckler who calls it the vagus nerve infection hypothesis. And the idea is that, sickness response, when there's an infection in the body, this is what inflammation is. It swells up so that more blood vessels can get in the area. It causes pain so that you immobilize, heat. If you have a low level infection in the vagus nerve, the body constantly thinks it's sick. This is the root of fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple chemical sensitivity. And it's really just this small infection in the neck, which is hard to reach. So, how do you reach that and how do you clean it out? Oils, especially clove oil, which is high in the constituent eugenol, sorry. It's antibacterial, antimicrobial. It's been used for centuries in dentistry. And it's really interesting topically applying it on that point. It's almost like, adding soap to the dirty dish pan.
Yeah.
It just helps to kind of break things up, unravel congestion, move stagnation, so that it helps to clean up the toxicity, and then eliminate kind of the congestion in the neck, so that the lymph can drain the toxins, the veins can deliver the oxygen, the vagus nerve can function. This, you can probably speak more to this. This is why any kind of head injury, it messes up the vagus nerve connection
Mm-hmm.
and throws everything off.
Yes, for sure. And everything, if it all affects from the down, like from the top down, right? And so, and plus that whole C1, C2 area has the highest density of proprioceptors in that area of the brain. And so that's where that's why there's so many changes. And this is why it's so powerful. So then what are some different natural remedies that can help to support vagus nerve stimulation, detoxification of that? I know you just spoke about the clove oil. So what other
Yeah,
little
well, I,
things?
I actually have a free gift for the listeners
Okay.
that includes 25 strategies. If you
Ooh.
go to boostthebrainbook.com/gift, it will detail it. But it's really a combination of, you really want to kind of help detoxify the vagus nerve, and then anything you can do to move the lymphatic fluid. So essential oils are great for that. It's, people don't realize that blends, it's kind of like, when two people marry and have children, the children are kind of a mix of each of the people. They might have features from one and features from the other. So with oils, you can do things like, mint are very expansive, so they help to dilate the vasculature. But then other oils, like, it's interesting to look at the property of the plant, like grounded herbs like vetiver. They kind of pull things downward, and people don't realize lymph is a one-way street. It drains in a particular direction. So the more you can kind of enhance the directionality, we're flowing down, we're flowing away from the brain, we're carrying the garbage to the blood, then the liver,
So
that
how
really
do you,
helps.
when you say that, how would you do that? If you're applying your blends,
Right.
are you tapping it downward, or how are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that? Yeah.
So with the parasympathetic blend for vagus nerve stimulation, I literally just apply it like I'm putting a needle in a point.
Okay.
With the lymphatic blend, you can combine it with castor oil, which is also
Yeah.
great for lymph flow. But I literally, I apply in kind of a downward motion. There are some videos I found online where you can
Yeah.
use your thumb and literally massage down. The other thing most people don't realize is that lymph doesn't flow evenly on both sides. It's more heavily on the left side. And some of the bottlenecks are like the left clavicle. So
Mm.
that's a good point to put oils on. And then under the left armpit, it's basically like you're clearing the obstacles, so that it just makes sure it leaves the brain, so that
Yeah.
toxins don't get stuck in the brain and recirculate and trigger a greater immune response and more inflammation. You're really just helping to take the garbage out.
Out of curiosity, do you ever do this and then like jump into a sauna?
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was just
Yeah,
thinking, like with
lymph
that.
and parasympathetic. Yeah, I layer oils with everything.
I
I
do
really
too.
do think that, it's like, if you can, it's like when people say like, "Oh, I think I want to lose weight. Should I diet or exercise?" I'm like, "Why don't you do both?"
Mhm.
The more kind of healing modalities you can combine, I think the bigger bang for the buck.
Absolutely. And I'm also the one, and I don't know how you tell people, like if they're doing like hot baths or anything like that, where they're just throwing their oil in the water. I'm like, put them on you instead to like force them into the body. Plus,
Well, yeah, you know what I like to do is castor oil over the liver with
mhm.
either liver or gallbladder supporting oils, like helichrysum's a good one, white grapefruit, and then the Epsom salt bath, and then you're kind of layering three things in.
Oh, I love that. That's huge for detoxification.
Yeah.
What other suggestions do you have for them?
Um, my other favorite one, it's interesting. I started to realize that how you apply is almost as important, if not more, than what you
Mhm.
apply. So a lot of the research, direct inhalation, smelling is the fastest way to get an oil into your system. And part of that is because the epidermal layer in your sinuses is thin.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to pass through as much to get into the capillaries and then the blood flow. Same with, the inside of the mouth. Like, I'm not a big fan of ingesting because I think it's less efficient, but things like peppermint or cinnamon are good for appetite control and craving control. So just putting a drop on the cheek,
Yes.
is really great. I like to add them to coconut oil and do oil pulling.
Yes, I do too. Especially, yes, for sure. And my dentist recommends that too, which is like That's why I love my dentist.
You know what's really funny? As a high cortisol person, that means, my teeth cleaning looks like a horror movie. There's a lot of blood usually. And it got to the point where they're like, we might have to refer you out to a periodontist. I'm like, oh, I don't want that. So I started oil pulling every day. And they're like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's great. Keep doing it. I'm like, good.
Isn't that awesome? I know mine was the same thing where I walked in and it was a very holistic person. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? And he looked at my teeth. He's like, you have like a little minor cavity that's starting, but I can tell you're oil pulling, aren't you? And I was like, how can you tell that? He goes, because you're already like filling it in. He goes, I'm not going to, he goes, just continue to do that and we'll watch it. And I was like, okay, I'm here. Like you are speaking my language, buddy. So versus other people that are like, no, we're going to drill. I'm like, can we just kind of be more conservative with this first? So,
Yeah, I've reversed cavities.
mhm.
Early on I was told I thought I didn't have any wisdom teeth. It turns out I have one. And it grew in, and my dentist was like, "You're gonna want to get that pulled." And I'm like, "Why would I do that?" Like, seriously, it was just I didn't understand. So I'm
Mhm.
like, "That seems silly," and it grew in fine. And she's like, "You're kind of magic. Like, you just fix whatever's going on." I'm like, oil
Mhm.
pulling."
Right. All right. Show them or tell them where they can get your book.
Yeah, so the book is available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, your local bookstore. And if you go to the boostthebrainbook.com/gift, we'll give you a bunch of extra book bonuses for buying it. It'll give you a lot more information to kind of, as a researcher, I wrote the book and I keep learning more. So I keep just adding more information online that they can use as an adjunct.
I love it. And let's share also the fact is that essential oils are not new. I think that's the big thing because there's
Yeah.
been such a growth of them over the course of like the last
Yeah.
10 years or so. Some people think you're like, oh, it's just such a new thing. And it's not. It's been around like this was medicine
Hmm.
before there was medicine.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
share a
Well,
little
what
bit?
most people don't realize is that most of our pharmaceutical drugs, over 50%, are derived from plants. You know, aspirin is derived from white willow bark, Valium is derived from valerian root, and oils are really just the concentrated essence of plant. It's almost a farm to table experience. You pick the lavender, you put it in the distiller, which is basically boiling water. The steam rises, the water goes in one area, the oil goes in the other area, and that is your essential oil, the concentrated essence of the plant, picked fresh and harvested. Terry Walls, who is kind of famous for her MS reversing diet protocol, she advises that people eat 200 different like plants during a year. She wrote the foreword because she's a huge oil fan. You can use oils. You don't have to have 200 different plants. In my blends alone, I can get you to 200 oils and different
I love
remedies
it.
because it's the flavonoids, the part of the
Mhm.
plant that metabolite that is actually beneficial, and that's what they find in a lot of the oil constituents. So it's pretty much what you're already doing if you're
Mhm.
eating plants or taking any kind of drugs. It's just
Yeah.
a more natural version.
I love it. My whole philosophy is making healthy living simple. So if somebody hears I need to do 200 plants a year, they're going to get overwhelmed. And you just made it simple.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
That's what I mean. I think that's the joy of parenting, right? You really
mhm.
try to simplify things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was so great with this wonderful conversation today. Anything else you want to share with our audience?
The only other thing is if you're feeling anxious and overwhelmed, one of my favorite application tips is to smell something through the left nostril, and I'll explain why. So, there's a whole branch of chiropractic called functional neurology where they're
Yes.
trying to balance different hemispheres of the brain. So, if you're having a panic attack, that is your right frontal lobe, your right forehead, that's overactive. So, the way you calm that is do something to stimulate your left frontal lobe, your left forehead. Your nose, cranial nerve number one, goes directly to the forehead. So, take your right thumb, plug your right nostril, smell anything in your house. It can be an oil. If you don't have oil, peel a tangerine. Oils live in the citrus peel of citrus fruits. So just smell that 3 to 7 breaths. It will stimulate the left frontal lobe, balance the two hemispheres, and you'll feel better.
I love it. And that's so often needed this time
Yeah.
after this year. And hopefully we'll see things shifting. Jodi, again, share with them where they can find your book one more time.
Essential oils to boost the brain and heal the body, anywhere books are sold. And you can find me at Vibrant Blue Oils.
Thank you so much.